What's up, everybody? Eddie Barkle here with the Nebula Music Podcast, and today I'm excited to be speaking with Sam Blakelock. Now, Sam is a very talented guitarist who's constantly posting videos on Instagram. Now, let me tell you, when I say talented, I mean it. This guy is incredibly good. Just go to Instagram, type his name in, and I guarantee you'll be blown away instantly by his talent and how good he is at playing guitar. But more impressively, he is also the creator and curator for Pickup Jazz, an online community on Instagram that features videos of musicians from all over the world. And I'm talking about really good musicians. The impressive part is that Sam built this community up from zero to where it is now, which is well over 240,000 followers. I mean, he did that all by himself. So I knew that I had to sit down with him and figure out his work ethic, how it is that he thought of the idea, and where he plans on taking it next. So let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right in. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. I'm really excited to have Sam Blakelock join me on today's episode. Sam, how are you?
Eddie, it's really great to be here, man. I'm doing great. Had a late gig last night, but I had 2 coffees, so I'm really hyped about doing this with you.
Do you feel energetic? Are those 2 coffees like livening you up?
Yep. Yeah, let's do it.
I feel like that's most of our breakfasts, especially as musicians. We gig so much late at night that we need at least 2 or 3 cups of coffee just to make it through the next gig.
I think so. I tried to quit them for about 2 weeks. I lasted about 2 days. I don't know. I feel like, I'm relying on them at this point. So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate you relying on them, at least just for this episode. After this, maybe you should go take a nap. Just saying.
That's probably much wiser than actually taking a coffee. So
true. Well, Sam, again, thank you so much for joining us. For those that haven't heard of Sam, he is a phenomenally talented guitarist. You probably have seen his stuff on Instagram and Facebook without even knowing, because his stuff is everywhere. While I could spend hours here talking about you, I would much rather you talk about yourself. So why don't you let us know where you got started, how you got started with your music career, and maybe what you're up to today.
Sure. So I live in New York City. I've been here for 5 years. I moved here to do grad school in jazz guitar.
Nice.
Graduated about 2 years ago. After I graduated, I pivoted a little bit and started doing more social media. I created this brand called Pickup Jazz and also continued my own guitar career. And really the social media has been a really powerful gateway to meet a ton of people, also to promote my own musical career. I've started consulting with that. But I guess to take it back even further, I'm from New Zealand. This little town called Christchurch, 300,000 people. There was a really active musical community, but we actually had an earthquake about 5 years ago.
Wow, really?
Oh, maybe it's 7 now. I've lost count. Which actually destroyed a lot of the venues in the city centre, city centre itself. And at that point, I was in the last year of my undergraduate studying jazz guitar. So it was pretty rough at the time. And then my reaction to that was to jump on a cruise ship for 3 years, on and off, where I traveled the world and was in the show band. I ended up doing music, being a music director in that. So it was New Zealand, cruise ships, and then graduate study in New York City, and then social media stuff, and then still figuring out what's next. But I've got a few interesting ideas.
Wow. I mean, there's so much history there in your career. I mean, what school did you go to for your graduate's degree here in New York?
So it's Aaron Copland School of Music, which is a jazz program part of Queen's College.
Are there a lot of guitarists that come out of that program and go on to do big things?
So there's a lot of jazz programs in New York City, and I got into a few. The faculty was really good. There's been some strong players coming out of it, but also it's a public school, so it's a bit more affordable.
Nice.
For me coming to New Zealand, also international fees. And my teachers were good. The students there were really good. It wouldn't be as widely known as Manhattan School of Music or Juilliard or the New School or NYU, but it was a solid program.
Nice. Were those options for you as well? Did you consider them at all? Or was your choice not necessarily primarily, but was the finances really a big deciding factor?
It was, yeah. because I got accepted to some other ones, but I couldn't afford them.
Do you feel like the educational difference between, let's say, Berkeley or Juilliard versus the school that you went to, do you feel like there's a significant difference and then the success that you can gain from that educational difference?
I don't think there is much of a difference. So I first experienced this when I was at Queen's College, where I was there with Berkeley cats or cats from University of North Texas, which is a really incredible school. Here was me coming from New Zealand from this really small program, and I felt comfortable performing with them. There were some guys kicking my butt for sure, but in terms of my my theory knowledge, my improvisational skills, I was up to par at that point. And then after graduating, I'm doing gigs all the time with people who went through Juilliard, all the schools that we know, Berkeley. And, no one cares what school you come from as long as you're a good player and you're a good person. I think it would perhaps only come into play if you're applying to a job, and if they have 4 candidates, one of them's from Queen's College, one of them's from, or the others are from more well-known schools, then they'll probably go with them.
Now, when you say job, do you mean like a tour, or do you mean like maybe Broadway, or do you mean
education, teaching.
Got it.
Yeah.
I guess that would matter, especially depending on the school that you study, you get your degree. That actually would matter when you're trying to go into, academics. But do you feel like maybe it was also that your work ethic was a little bit different, or do you just feel like both schools educate enough for you to become a great player?
I think the work ethic is a part to play, for sure. I think you can make the most of whatever situation you're in. I'd say the biggest factor is the students who you study with. So, for example, going to Berkeley, from the guys I've talked to who are out in LA now, the community that you are surrounded with is perhaps the most important part. It's kind of, you can be a really awful drummer and go through Berkeley. You can be a really awful drummer and go through Queen's College. It kind of depends on you as a person and also the other people who are there with you.
Since you're talking about how much it matters to be surrounded by a group of people that are actually, doing good stuff, how soon were you involved in that group? Was it part of the school experience, or did you put yourself in that environment?
Which musicians do you mean, Eddie? Sorry.
In New York, you're playing I know that you're playing for some off-Broadway stuff, and then you're doing a lot of social media stuff. And you also mentioned how you've played with some people from Berkeley and Juilliard. So I guess I'm curious how that came to be. I went to music schools too, and most of the people I interacted with were people from my school. I mean, that was practically it. But if you were out talking to and playing with other musicians from other environments, I'm curious as to where that happened and how that happened.
So the initial connection with those other musicians came through people who I studied with. And then as I graduated, and it's been a few years since I graduated, now I've started playing with other people from other programs. So I guess the initial connection probably would have been, I can trace every gig or every relationship back to, a single person that I knew. And that's usually going to be someone I knew at school here, or someone I knew on cruise ships, because I knew a few people in New York. And now it's starting to happen where I'm just meeting people through Instagram and social media. And it's actually interesting that those relationships with people online don't usually lead to gigs. All my gigs are still coming through, just knowing people and going to jam sessions and not screwing up the gig.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about that social media stuff. I mean, I know you've been doing it for maybe 2-3 years. So I'm curious as to, how you got started and what made you want to get started with social media.
So before I got into social media, I was in grad school. Before that, I was on a cruise ship where there was actually very little internet, and internet cost like a lot of money. I would be spending $40 a week on internet cards, and it was like dial-up speed. So I was way out of the loop. Didn't really have Instagram, used Facebook occasionally, and then through grad school, still wasn't really into it. I guess something happened. I don't know if I was reading a book. I got really inspired by this guy called Gary Vee, who all your listeners should check out.
Yep, I know that guy. I know that name.
Yep. Yeah, I'm sure you do, man, because you're killing it. So it's very interesting. Anyone who's listened to him is usually doing really great things. It's often a common denominator amongst musicians who are doing interesting things. So I read all his books, started watching his podcast. Actually, I found him through a YouTuber called Casey Neistat. That's how it all started. So he used to do daily vlogs, Casey Neistat, and then in one of them he went into the office of this guy called Gary V. And at first, watched through this vlog, I was like, this guy's an arsehole. He doesn't, he's like a loudmouth. And then I kept watching Casey's vlogs, and I think he went back again a few weeks later. And then this time I was like, okay, Casey Neistat has been with this guy. He can't be all that bad. And then I really got hooked on Gary's stuff, and that inspired me to take social media seriously. His kind of ethos is that your mobile phone is a TV, and then on the mobile phone, people are on social apps, and that's where they're spending all their time. And if you have a story to tell, a product to sell, or you want to connect with people, then you should be where they are, which is on their mobile phones. And on their mobile phones, there's different apps. So what I did was, I was interested in jazz guitar education at the time. I had a website, pickupjazz.com, which I was running with a little bit of outdated methodology, which is getting high in Google results and then monetizing through like AdWords, which is how things kind of worked pre-social media. Like 2000, I don't know what the exact dates are, pre-2012, I guess.
Yeah, it's like 2009-ish. It's kind of where it started. Then, 2012. You're on the money.
So I missed that boat with Google AdWords, and I was including all these keywords in all the pages, and I made this website. It's just still up there, and it's actually still doing pretty well. It's such a slow process, though. So I pivoted to social media. I tried out Reddit, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, and I gave them all a good go for a month or so. And I found Instagram was giving me the most results. So then I stuck with it, and it was a process of trial and error. At first, it was just me. Pickup Jazz was me, my personal thing. And then I didn't know where I was going, but I was just trying things out and watching other people who are already established themselves. And then, it's kind of gone from there.
That's interesting. I'm glad you bring up Gary Vee, just because you're absolutely right. I'm all about what his stuff is about. And I think I discovered Gary maybe a year and a half ago, so close to the time where you discovered him too. For those of you guys that do not know who Gary Vee is, his full name is Gary Vaynerchuk, and you definitely should check out some of his stuff. He is an entrepreneur and social media guy who started off in the wine business, if I'm not mistaken. And ever since 13, 14, he's just been posting lots of stuff every day about social media and encouraging people to use it, which in a way is kind of where this was inspired by. And he's just on it. Like, he's everywhere now. Like, if you open up Facebook and you see on your feed some video about this aggressive dude talking about how you're wasting your time and you got to like hustle and own it, like, it's probably Gary Vee. I'm really happy that he inspired you to kind of get up and do it. And so, was there anything specific or that you watched or that you learned that really kind of jump started it? Was there maybe like a video or a quote that he said that you were like, you know what, I need to get started now? Or was it just a gradual transition into like, I may see how this works out, and then over time you kind of became more devoted?
I think there were some key videos on YouTube, and they were his keynotes. I can't remember the exact one, but any of his keynotes, often it's the same spiel. And it's really, he talks about the urgency of acting now and making the most of this opportunity, because the quicker you are to move, the bigger head start you have. And I think I've seen that on Instagram. I was in no way the first at all. There are people with much larger platforms than me, some of them who have now overpassed, but some of them who are still, killing it. For example, there's Riff Raw's University of Rock, talented musicians. A lot of those guys are now, they got on there earlier than me, so they had a huge head start. I beat a lot of people to it, so I have my own head start. But yeah, in terms of turning points, watching a few of Gary's keynotes, and then I'm still kind of learning from him. I think I probably listen to him too much. So right now I've been trying to round out where I get my inspiration from, looking for a few different sources. But I really think he is providing the most value, and it's not shady at all. He's not asking for an ebook sign up or or a money for his value.
Nah, he's just spitting advice.
Yeah. Eddie, I'll be interested, how did he help you, and how much of a role did he play in your career?
Wow. Well, thank you for asking that question, just because it's a very good question on your behalf. I don't remember specifically the video that I saw, but I know, I'm not sure which first video I saw, but I know the one that changed my life. There's this really famous one where I think he was being interviewed, and he's talking about a retirement home and how he visited a retirement home and he hung out with a lot of older people. And he was talking about regret. He was talking about how there's nothing worse than seeing regret in an old person's life. And he just went on for about like 8 to 10 minutes about, not regretting what you do, and make sure that if you have an idea or if you have something, to take action, because we're all going to get old and we're all going to die at some point. And the last thing we want is to get to that point and realize that we didn't do what we wanted. A little bit about my backstory. I used to play more professionally when I was younger in the Hispanic community. And then I stopped doing that when I went to school. And I went to school to study jazz, which, oddly enough, here's the kicker, I was actually rejected from the jazz program of the school that I chose to go to 6 times. I auditioned 6 times and I didn't get in. And so I went through the music business program and it was great. And then once I graduated, I wanted to really get into the music industry. And I went to networking events. I met some really great people, and it all changed when I met this producer, which was right around the time that I started watching Gary Vee. And so this producer, I gave him my business card, and he practically rejected me because I didn't have anything online. And so right around that time, I remembered what I watched, with Gary Vee, and it just kind of clicked. I don't know how to describe it, but it clicked to me like I needed to do something about that. So literally the next week, I woke up at 5 a.m, started going to the practice rooms in my old school, and just brought all my equipment, man. I brought my lights, I brought my iPhone and stuff, and I brought my laptop, and I just started recording maybe once or twice a week. And then over time, people started seeing my videos more, and very much like you, it just kind of became like a snowball effect. But that's essentially how it got started. It was a combination of being rejected by a very respectful individual and watching Gary Vee talk about regret. And it just clicked, it clicked to me, like, am I going to constantly be rejected and have nothing to show for it? Or am I going to do something about it? And I mean, I appreciate you asking that question, because now I'm getting the feels, man. I'm remembering how I got started with that stuff. And I don't know, it is fascinating how one phrase can change your life. That's the point of this, is to at least show you that there are multiple people that have done something good with social media, and that you can do the same. So, Sam, I'm curious about Pickup Jazz, because Pickup Jazz is a very influential platform now on Instagram. I think you have 200,000 plus followers, maybe even more, if I'm not mistaken. And so I'm actually curious as to what kind of strategies did you implement to grow it to that size? I know you got in early on the action, so that probably played a good role in that. But I'm sure as time went on, you had to apply some other things. So I'm curious.
Sure. Yeah, I'll share a few tactics that hopefully listeners can apply. Some of these will only apply because it's a curated channel rather than sharing original content. But here's a few thoughts. And I can send you a blog post where I have all these, and I also have a 14-page write-up, which I did of these, which is a little bit outdated, which is the nature of social media, I guess.
Yes.
So I started off, it was my personal channel. I grew it to 1,300, just me. And that was a real grind. And many people will be going through that right now. Let's say they have 300 followers, they're trying to get to 1,000 or 2,000. So the hacks, or tricks that I did there was, first of all, obviously the content is the most important thing. So I would use a DSLR, set up the lighting really nice. I first got into it by forcing myself to put out content every day. And how I did that was transcribe 15 seconds of a solo every day and keep posting it. So consistent content, high quality content. Then what I did was I went through and just liked a bunch of posts with specific hashtags and left comments on them. It's a really common technique. You can buy apps or pay for apps which would do that for you. I just did it manually. And many of my friends also did that, who now also have 60,000 plus followers. And then it was a matter of trial and error in terms of the content, in terms of the hashtags. I researched what hashtags to use. I called myself a hashtag scientist at that time.
Nice.
This was before the algorithm, so hashtags were really, really powerful. They still are to some extent, but back then, that's how you would grow, would be by getting in the top posts of hashtags. So
right.
I used Google Keep, and I would have like 10 to 15 different hashtags for different niches. So let's say I did a video which had some blues flavors in it or something. Anyway, I would rotate the hashtags I'd use, so try and hit as many as possible. So that was the personal point that I got up to about 2,000 or 3,000. Then I don't know why I decided to do it, but I decided to flip it so it wasn't about me, it was about a community. And I started sharing, first of all, my friends who are on the platform.
Nice.
At this point, there were other channels doing the same. They all had about perhaps 30 to 60,000. And I introduced the Pickup Jazz hashtag. At first, I really had to really push it to get people to use the hashtag. Because who wants to get featured by an account with 2,000 followers?
Yeah.
No one really wants to do that. But if they're my friends, and then they'll be into that. So I started sharing people. I did all these little competitions, weekly jams, and actually all the content is there, so you can go back and see me failing and at some point succeeding, and then whatever I succeeded with, I just continued doing that. And then I guess 10,000 followers was a really big milestone. That was, I think, Christmas of 2015. And by that point, there was a lot of momentum with people using the hashtag, where I was getting a lot of high quality posts, which I could then feature. So it kind of fed itself at that point.
Nice.
So that was a nice little thing to have this cycle of content coming to me where I didn't really have to search for it. That took me to about probably like 80,000, just, being a place for people to share people's music.
Whoa, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah. I guess along the way, there's a lot of really small stuff. Do you want me to get into more specific details?
Yeah,
or is this good?
Absolutely. You know what? I'm actually curious too. Let's get into those details. How long did it take to get from 2,000 to 10,000, you think? Like a month, 2 months? How long?
It was 300 to like 2,000 was 3 months. I guess, I don't know, 2,000 to 10,000. I don't know. I'd guess 6 months or something.
6 months. I mean, that seems about right. So what about the hashtags? I know you mentioned like something about hashtags. Do you know a little bit more about that?
So here's some specific tactics to use hashtags to grow your account. So hashtags are a way to get new users. And what you want to do is get in the top posts of these hashtags. So you don't want to use hashtags where you won't be getting in the top posts. For example, hashtag music, hashtag love. There's going to be millions of people using them. So you want to find those tags which are, first of all, relevant to what you're doing. If you're a singer, singers, or if you're a guitarist, maybe it's guitarists rather than guitar. And you want to use a range of the ones where you get in the top posts, perhaps only if it's a really good video. So those are going to be reasonably popular hashtags. Also, you want to use really small niche hashtags where not many people are using them at all. And the reason you want to use those is because if you get in the top post, you'll then be in that hashtag for longer. You could be up there for 2 weeks. It's going to be a smaller niche, so perhaps less people will be looking at it, but you'll be up there for longer. So what I would do, just to get really specific, I would have a core group. You can have 30 hashtags, right? I'd have a core group of 15 hashtags, which I would use for every post. These are general ones. I might hit the top posts of maybe 5 of them. Then I would have 15 smaller hashtags, which I could easily get in the top posts of. And as my accounts grew, I would then change these hashtags and update them, so I was always hitting them. And this really took me to, I would say, 100,000 people, and this was pre-algorithm. Nowadays, actually deconstructing the algorithm, I think, it's a lot harder than figuring out hashtags, and it's something I'm still trying and failing at, because it's a bit more intangible, the algorithm, figuring out how that works, getting on the Discover page, I can talk about Discover page, my thoughts on that. I don't know all the answers, but Discover page now is where you get a lot of your video views from. So up the top there, if anyone clicks their phone right now in the search icon, they'll see recommended videos. And then there's going to be a bunch of videos, and there's going to be curated channels. There's one for drummers, singers, guitarists, bassists. Sorry, guys, there's no bass channel. There's piano players.
There isn't.
There's woodwinds. And if you can get in one of those channels, that's when you're going to get 80,000+ views. You could get as many as 500,000. And that's regardless of how many followers you are. If the algorithm decides your video is engaging content, it will keep it there, and it will just, it could stay up there for weeks. So actually figuring out how to get in that is a little bit of a gray zone for me. I think other people have figured it out. I think it's to do with the hashtags. It's to do with people who follow you. It's to do with who you follow. And actually, Eddie, going back to general hashtag thing, following a lot of people is such a bad idea. Also, getting lukewarm or ghost followers is also an awful idea, because it's going to water down your engagement percentage. So, for example, if you have 1,000 followers, you post a post and only 2 of those 1,000 like it, that's not a good thing. Whereas if you had 200 followers and 100 of them liked a post, Instagram is going to recognize that and is going to prioritize you in your followers' feed.
How true. And you know what? I'm glad you bring up the discovery page and the engagement, because those are two things that are very important when you're trying to start an account. If you guys are starting Instagram right now, or maybe are trying to figure out how to grow it, Instagram has been changing a lot lately, and especially over the last year or two. What worked in 2014 when I started, it definitely doesn't work as much now, just like you're basically saying. And I would argue that the discovery page is essentially the way to go. That's what you're trying to hit. And the algorithm, the way it works is that if your post is liked or viewed a certain amount of times, depending on when you posted it. So let's say you post it right now, let's say it's noon, and within like 10 minutes, or maybe, I don't know what the algorithm is, but let's say 10 minutes, you get like 10 to 20 likes. Then Instagram is triggered that maybe your post is worthy, and it starts showing it to more and more people. And then once you hit a threshold, which I don't know what that threshold is, then it starts to show it to more and more people. Then eventually it puts it on the discovery page, because it thinks that your post is worthy, because obviously the difference in time and the amount of likes that you're getting is obviously substantial.
Yep, I think you nailed it. I think that's the flow of how it works.
Now, I wish I knew the numbers. Like, I really wish someone out there would tell me what the amount of likes and what the amount of views is, but I really don't know. And I think Instagram has done a good job of kind of keeping that to themselves. And who knows, maybe they change it every day. Maybe that's why it's hard to figure out. But the point is trying to get content that's really well filmed so that your followers will like it right away. That way Instagram can trigger that algorithm for you.
That's right. And people have noticed that that's how it works. And there's people who use techniques and ways to hack it. For example, Gary Vee did this thing called the 60-second club. If you left a comment within the first 60 seconds of his post on Instagram, then you could win a prize. So he recognized that this was really, really important. So that's how he encouraged it. Other ways I've seen people do this is, well, of course, the post itself has to be good, but often posting in your story and then saying, hey, there's a new post, leave a comment and I will do this, follow you or something. The first 30 minutes is really, really important. You got to really capture them. And then, if it's really good, it will push it to the Discover page. But then I think beyond that, getting onto the guitar channels, how long it stays up there, it's kind of hard to control that.
Right. Let me take this in a slightly different direction, just because I'm curious, and maybe it's a side note, and maybe you don't know, but did you get a chance to network with other bigger accounts at the time? Like when you were growing your account, did you maybe reach out to some bigger platforms and maybe ask them to post some of your content, and like maybe you would exchange by posting one of their content? Because I know that's something that a lot of people have done. I'm not sure if it's something that people are still doing, but I'm curious if you did and if you still feel like that's an advantage today.
So I never paid for any apps to like automatically like. I never teamed up with anyone. Um, Probably until 200,000. This is talking about Pickup Jazz. And that was something I was quite proud of, that I just kind of did it myself. I had some shout outs actually when the page was my own personal things. I got shouted out by Riffraws, which was an account, Ambient Notes. I know those guys now. They would actually shout me out in a kind of feature type of way rather than I think you might be talking about private groups where you help each other out and do shout out for shout out. So I didn't do any of that. And I know it works. And I also tried to do that recently, and it didn't work for me either. So I think you just can't get past high quality content, engaging with people, asking a question in the caption, replying to people, putting out a good vibe, providing value. And I think people can really know that. And there's ways to kind of trick them or to hack the system, but I think it's always going to come down to if you're genuine and if you're providing value.
Absolutely. Now, I know that your own personal account, Sam Blakelock, on Instagram is also doing fairly well. I think you have 80 plus. I don't remember how many you have, but you have 80,000 followers. And so I'm curious, which one was successful first and which one did you focus mostly on? Or did maybe your Sam personal one just kind of grew simultaneously as you were doing Pickup Jazz? I'm just curious.
So Pickup Jazz was me, my personal one. It was me traveling the world. Then I changed it to me playing guitar, then me as a channel, and then just the channel with me, the guy behind it. I introduced Sam Blakelock a lot later on, actually. I feel like this was maybe a year and a half ago. Started from nothing and just created my own personal brand there, my own videos. It's quite nice having two of them because often one won't be doing so well, then I can focus on the other. I also like the idea of having a personal brand and a brand which I'm not the face of. It's quite an exciting thing to be able to curate something which is bigger than yourself.
I think that's really cool. That's definitely something that I think a lot of people should look into, is making sure. I mean, as creative people, I think it takes a lot to put yourself out there. I mean, that's just a reality, especially, you or me, we're putting our creativity and what we love out there for the people to see. And so having not necessarily a faceless brand, but maybe a brand that you represent that some people know that you own, but you don't promote it that way, right? Like Pickup Jazz, it's Pickup Jazz. It's not Sam's Pickup Jazz. It's its own entity that you run. It gives you that freedom to kind of, put content out there that other people might like, but not necessarily have to stress out every day to do a guitar video yourself. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I think everyone should consider having a brand which isn't them, because it does feed back to your personal career as a musician, because it's a way to connect with other people which isn't you.
Is it hard to balance time between both accounts?
Instagram in general takes a lot of my time, so I'm trying to be very efficient about not wasting time on the platform.
Nice. Well, let's talk a little bit about your own personal life. I mean, outside of social media, I know social media takes up a lot of our times and it helps us with our careers. So I know you play a lot of guitar stuff. I know you have a lot of gigs around New York and you also do consulting work. So let me ask, did a lot of those come from social media, or did you have a lot of those before you even started it?
Most of my guitar gigs are separate from social media, and social media doesn't really affect those in any way.
Who do you play for, if I can ask, or play with?
So right now I do a corporate work with wedding bands. With Donis Winston is an entrepreneur and a fantastic singer and a band leader, and I sub for his band and he has a few bands. So those are gigs I do often. I play with a few jazz singers, just small dates. I guess the biggest name of a guy who I played with was an off-Broadway show with Perez Hilton, which is a musical parody of the TV show Full House. So I did that 2 to 3 nights a week for a year. And interesting fact, I was actually playing bass on that, not guitar.
Really? Oh, wow. Well, how was that experience? Talk to us a little bit about how it was like to be on an off-Broadway show and playing bass.
Yeah, so I got the offer. I thought it was an offer to play guitar. It was through a friend who I knew from cruise ships. Andrew Rosario. Shout out to Andrew. So I thought I was playing guitar, but then when I was on the phone with the producer, he said, "So you're playing bass?" I was like, "Yeah, I play bass." And then I went out and bought a bass from Guitar Center for $300.
Nice.
And I just shedded bass clef because I didn't really know how to read bass clef. I'd done a bit of piano. So just dived into that, said yes, turned up, and then did the gig for, I think it was nearly a year. It's off Broadway, so it's not flashy. It's in the Lower East Side. It's kind of grungy. It was very rude humor, but very hilarious. The cast was really phenomenal. I was with this company who does a lot of these parody musicals, like very gay, very funny. And it was just interesting to be, working 3 nights a week, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Nice. Is that something that maybe you want to look into doing more in the future, like playing for actual Broadway shows?
That's something that I used to want to do. It was kind of a nice stepping stone from cruise ships. I wanted to do grad school. Then I applied a lot to do Broadway national tours. As soon as I graduated, I was hitting them all up. I was like emailing guitarists from Broadway shows. And I did the off-Broadway show. And I still do cabaret and the occasional thing, but I decided that wasn't the pathway that I wanted to go down.
Right.
I didn't see, I'm not sure why. I think it was probably because I went to Chicago and I saw the band in Chicago and I thought they looked pretty miserable. And the reason I wanted to do music was to have creative freedom and play music I like, not do music because it has a good paycheck.
What do you think was making them miserable? I mean, you probably don't necessarily know for sure, but I'm curious as to why you got that feeling that they were miserable in Chicago.
I think different shows are different. Like, I'm sure if you're on Hamilton or some of these other shows, which are a bit newer, it's gonna change. I think it's just repetition, playing the same thing every night. And I experienced that on cruise ships. It gets old playing the same music every night, and doing an off-Broadway thing, I could play that show with my eyes closed. And of course, they counter that with other creative projects. I know a lot of Broadway guys do that, and I wouldn't say no to a Broadway gig. It's great money, and it's you have to be an incredible player, an incredible sight reader, very versatile. But it's not something that I've really continued to focus on.
Right. So when you got the off-Broadway show, talk to me a little bit about, the beginning process. So obviously you auditioned and you got the part. Do you guys spend a lot of time rehearsing the music? Or is it pretty much you get the music and then in 2 weeks, pretty much, rehearsals start with the actual cast? Or how does that work?
We had the music beforehand. I had it for a couple of days. So then I just shedded it. And then we turned up and I think we rehearsed for 1 or 2 weeks. And then the cast came in for most of that. We rehearsed the show. And again, it's off Broadway. It's not super fancy. It wasn't, I think a proper Broadway show would be much more organized. The show, being a small off-Broadway show, we would make changes as the season went on. The MD would make changes. There'll be new songs introduced. If some songs didn't work, then there'll be a new song. So that was interesting to see that progress.
So I know you do a lot of consulting work with, companies, and I think you might have even mentioned Carnegie Hall. So I'm curious as to how you got started with that, and maybe like what you do day to day and where you see yourself going with that.
So I developed a lot of skills, creating my own brand and my own personal brand on social media. So I realized that these were skills which I could use to help other people. So at Carnegie Hall, I do email marketing there. It's just part-time, so it's not too high level. And then apart from that, I work with Greenleaf Music, which is a record label run by a jazz trumpet player called Dave Douglas, and I'm running their social media accounts. Got a video shoot on Monday with Joe Lovano, which is going to be fantastic.
Nice.
I also worked with Alternative Guitar Summit. We had a little bit of a festival, and Pat Metheny, Bill Frisell, and a lot of really fantastic jazz guitarists. I helped do all of the marketing for that. And from those 2 opportunities, I've been getting to know the jazz PR world and being recommended some other projects, which some I'm saying yes to, some I'm saying no to. I find it really interesting helping other people, and I feel like it's the next logical step after figuring out for myself.
I'm curious about the social media, work that you do for, let's say, like the label. So when you say that you help them out with their social media, does that mean that you basically are doing what you do for your own personal accounts, but for someone else, and you try and think, what would they want to post?
Yeah, so it's high level, and it's also just the nuts and bolts of social media. So high level being, how does social media help them to sell things? How does social media help them create a community? And how can I help them create engaging content which is suited to people's phones, which is where awareness is. So it's really hard to differentiate between the content and the distribution of the content on the social media channels. So a lot of the work I'm doing is helping them create the content, the video content, as well as editing existing content, for example, YouTube videos. So there's the content, there's figuring out actually how this is going to make the money, which is probably the most challenging part. And then there's just the day-to-day posting on all the social media channels.
Now, I imagine that it's different from company to company. Is there a process that you use on how to figure out how content is going to make a company money? Is there like a universal process, or is it just something that you kind of figure out every, job that you're at?
So I didn't go to school for marketing, but I've watched a lot of YouTube videos, and I don't think you go to school for social media or Facebook ads. So there is a process. I think the main one would be just a sales funnel, and it's figuring out how email, how social fits into that sales funnel. And so at the top of the funnel, there's people who don't know your brand. And then as you work your way down and it becomes narrower and narrower, it's people who know your brand more, who have engaged with you, and those are the people you want to sell with. So a lot of what I'm doing with them and with myself is just being very aware of how the content fits in that funnel. Is it just to get eyes? Is it just to get people to watch the video? Or is it to be targeted at specific people who then you have a value offer to, buy something, buy a CD? And making sure those types of content you're not confused about who's watching it. So yeah, if anyone is interested in that, just throw in YouTube, Facebook sales funnel, social media sales funnel, or marketing sales funnels.
Very cool, man. I think that's a topic for like another conversation, because I definitely have researched and read upon, sales funnels and doing Facebook ads. It's a completely complicated world. It seems easy. I'm not sure if you've ever tried them, but I remember when I first got started, sometimes, Facebook would advise you to, make an ad, reach this many people, but it's not as easy as just paying $20 and reaching, supposedly 10,000 people. There's a huge system that goes into that and figuring out how to get people, to convert. It's impressive that you have it. Like, I'm really impressed and admire that you went out and you learned how to do it yourself, which speaks a lot about our generation and the opportunities to have. And that's something I really like to talk about with every episode that I do. Is I always like to just mention that no matter what it is you do, whether it is that you want to play guitar, do social media marketing like Sam is doing, or I don't know, whatever it is, with the day and age that we live in today, there really isn't no excuse for you to not learn how to do it. And you watched it on YouTube, right? You learned all of your techniques by watching YouTube?
Yep, it's all there for you to learn, and you can't go to university to learn how to do social media, to run a Facebook ad. It's all just there on YouTube. You can just, not watch Netflix. You can just go right now and study that stuff, figure out how to do it, and you can start making money tomorrow if you have a good product to sell, or if you have some talent that you want to share. There's a massive opportunity right now, and I definitely encourage everyone to, dive into it.
Absolutely. I mean, don't miss the opportunity, guys. I mean, we live in an amazing time where social media is still free. I mean, I don't really know where it's headed, and I'm not going to pretend like I know. But the fact that we have access to all this information, we can reach millions of people across the globe, and you have a service or a product or your talent that you want to display, there's so much opportunity to turn it into actual careers, things that actually pay you money, that whole stuff. Like it's an unbelievable how easy it can be if you just devote a little bit of time to learning how to do it. And I think you did that extremely well.
Yeah, and a lot of people aren't. So if you're one of the few people who do take the time to study it, then there's going to be some really exciting things happen for you.
Absolutely. Well, you've given me a lot of advice. I want to know a little bit more about you, just to kind of get an idea of what it is that you do outside of work. I mean, you do a lot of music stuff. You got your guitar gigs, you got Pickup Jazz, which is unbelievably successful, and you do a lot of consulting work. What do you like to do outside of music? Is there anything that kind of takes up your time that you enjoy doing, that you kind of it helps you to relax and just do, just fun stuff?
There isn't much, to be honest. My life is just music, social media, meeting people who I know through social media. I do really enjoy talking to non-musicians, my friends who are non-musicians, but really this is my life and I'm a bit of a workaholic. So I kind of juggle some projects which are more easy on me. That's what I do for fun. And then some, to me, a relaxing evening is watching a YouTube tutorial on Facebook ads or watching Gary V's Daily V.
Nice.
And that's about, maybe I watch a movie one time. I like running. I like eating healthy. I like meditating. But that's all kind of towards becoming more effective and feeding back into the things I want to do.
Nice. You're a runner then. So am I. Look at that.
Just starting. I wouldn't call myself a runner yet.
I can show you a thing or two. If you ever come to LA, I can definitely show you some cool places to run. But my interest is piqued because you mentioned something that I do myself, and I think a lot of successful people do, is that they talk to people that are outside of their influence world or their, industry. I definitely talk to a lot of business owners. I talk to a lot of people that I'm always curious to learn how it is that they do what they do and what they think. So I'm curious about who you talk to that's outside of your circle of influence. I'm not necessarily interested in names. I'm mostly interested in occupations. What kind of people do you talk to and learn from that are not necessarily musicians?
So this is an area which I'm trying to do more of. I'm trying to really push myself to do, is to talk to people who aren't in my usual scene, because I think it's really easy to stay trapped, or not trapped, just stay comfortable amongst people who have similar interests to you. But every time I talk to a person who's really killing it in their field, which is non-music, I really come away inspired, and it brings a new perspective. So there's a lot of really inspired and talented people in the tech space. So I always enjoy going to tech meetups, startup weekends. I haven't done many, but whenever I go, I just come away feeling super inspired and meeting a lot of great people. Other guys I talk to, I got a friend who's in data science. I've becoming getting to know this guy who's a branding guy for a fashion label.
Nice.
So yeah, just people like that.
Very cool, man. And so here's what I think about you. You are definitely a dedicated dude. And there is a reason why the stuff that you touch is so successful, because when you don't know something, you figure it out. You don't necessarily wait for someone to hand it to you. You go out and you get it. And then trial and error. That's definitely something I've learned from you today. You like to experiment. And if something doesn't work, you have no problem moving on and doing something differently with it. But you have a goal that you're trying to reach. And I think that's important for anybody trying to start anything. And it doesn't matter if it's a social media account, a music career, whatever it is that you're trying to do. Learn from Sam, trial and error, and that motivation and that perseverance to continuously try and just always be changing, but always push for that goal. I know that sometimes things can get us down and it's hard to get things started. I mean, just like when you started Pickup Jazz and you started your own social media account, at a time you were at only 300 followers, and most people will look at your account now and see 200,000 plus and they think, wow, that's amazing. But they don't realize that there was a lot of hard work to get to that stage. So assuming that someone comes up to you, someone that wants to do something similar, or they have a project that they're trying to achieve and they're maybe going through a hard time, what would you tell them? What would you suggest for them to do to pick themselves up and get out of it?
So something that helped me was realizing that really successful people who I look up to are still struggling, are still failing daily, are still, trying to figure out what's next. They're not perfect people, and I'm not a perfect person either. And I'm not as nearly as successful as these people. So I think it's realizing that there's always going to be these roadblocks and you have to figure out how to work through them. There's always going to be times where you just want to do nothing and want to give up. And I do that every week, probably daily. I probably want to give up, and realizing that happens no matter where you are or how successful you feel you are. That's always going to happen. So it's part of the process of accepting that and realizing that you'll always bounce back.
To bounce off what Sam said, I mean, look at any successful man or woman, any successful person that's achieved something great, and look at their history. And I guarantee you'll see tons and tons and tons of failures. But more often than not, the people that reach the top are the people that don't quit. I mean, perfect example that's current in the news is probably, the CEO and owner of Tesla, Elon Musk. You see Tesla now and you think, wow, look at that company. Great idea. Look at the beautiful cars. Now they're investing in space stuff. But I remember when they first came to LA, people just thought it was stupid. People were like, what the hell is this thing doing here? No one's going to buy it. And it remained there for 10 years before it became what it is today. And so obviously, maybe you're not trying to start the next big startup or the next car company, but the lessons are the same across the board. It took 10 years, maybe even more, I don't know, for Tesla to become what it is today. 10 years. And so the key is he didn't give up. He kept learning and he kept pushing for that. And there's even more stuff that Eli did before Tesla that I'm not going to get into. I'm just simply saying, if there's something you want to achieve, learn from Eli, learn from Sam, keep on pushing every day, because every day you get better. Every mistake leads you to something even better. And one day you reach that success no matter what.
Really good words.
I guess I just want to ask, is there anything new that you're working on? Maybe something that you'd like to share that, something that you're going to come up with within the next year or two that you want to work towards too?
One thing I want to shout out of my own that I'm doing is this new project, which is called Pickup Jazz Growth Club. It's 5 people every week. I'm in the first week right now, and it's a private Facebook group, and I send out a challenge every day. If people pass all 7 challenges, then I'm going to feature them on Pickup Jazz. It's going really, really well. There's some really great conversations happening in the Facebook group. People at different levels, some with as little as 300 followers. And I think it's like a nice little community thing that's happening. So if people are interested in that, check it out. Just send me an email or whatever.
Straight to the point. I like it. If someone's trying to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you? Do they just go to Pickup Jazz and DM you through Instagram, or is there like a specific email or website that they have to go to?
So go to either of my Instagram channels. You can just click the email in that. That's going to go straight to my cell phone.
You've laid so much knowledge on me. I can't even comprehend how much knowledge I have on my hands. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this conversation. And I thank you again for being here, for taking the time out of your very busy day to talk to me. I feel inspired, and I hope that you enjoyed it too.
Yeah, maybe next time I'll be interviewing you on my podcast, because I want to hear more about you, Eddie.
I would love to. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Sam. I know I found it very beneficial. There was a lot of information that even I didn't know, and I know for a fact that I'm going to use that information and apply it to some of my work. But more importantly, I want you guys to understand and learn from Sam. He wasn't taught how to be a social media marketer, but he learned it by going out there, searching on YouTube and on the internet and figuring it out. And like I've said before, we live in an amazing time where you can teach yourself how to do anything. All you have to do is believe that you can do it and just start. Start today. It doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter if you spend 5 minutes, an hour, 5 hours a week. As long as you start and you always keep going and teaching yourself stuff, there really isn't anything that you can't do. Don't stop tuning in. I've got lots of great content coming your way.